This is Nightline. I'm Brendan Wong. News making the headlines. Government has never allowed Chin Peng's ashes to be brought home to Malaysia, says Home Minister. And a Freedom of Information Act expected next year. Good morning. Home Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin on Wednesday confirmed that the government has never allowed the ashes of former Communist Party of Malaya leader Chin Peng to be brought home. The question now is how the ashes could have been allowed into the country when the government policy clearly forbade it. Speaking to reporters at the 13th ASEAN Ministers' meeting on cross-border crime in Bangkok, Thailand, Tan Sri Muhyiddin said several quarters had lodged police reports and the matter would be investigated in detail and appropriate action taken. Based on the guidelines on bringing back and taking out the ashes of a person, a family member or any person must inform the Royal Malaysian Customs Department. According to the Royal Malaysian Customs Department website, the procedure to bring into Malaysia an urn containing human ashes is the same as the procedure to bring back a human corpse, except that an import permit is not required from the Ministry of Health. And the person who brings in the urn must inform the customs officer on duty at the entry point. Meanwhile, the Malaysian Armed Forces Veterans Association, PVATM, and Retired Senior Police Officers Association of Malaysia have condemned the action of bringing the ashes back into the country. PVATM President Datuk Sharudin Omar said the act is deemed insulting to the nation and its fight against communism. In the meantime, police are now investigating how the ashes were brought back by a group of individuals to Malaysia. Bukit Aman CID Director Datuk Huzir Mohamad, his team, and with assistance from Perak Police, are carrying out the probe to determine how the group managed to cross the border with the ashes from Thailand. Datuk Huzir said the authorities had identified the date and entry point used by the group to bring Chin Peng's ashes into the country. However, police were not able to release further details as investigation is still in the early stages.
So, kita telah membuka kertas siasatan dan kita juga telah meminta bantuan daripada Perak dan Perak pun telah mengesahkan kepada kita bahawa jalan masuk dia, tarikh masuk dia kita telah kena pastilah.
It was reported that the ashes of Chin Peng, whose real name was Ong Bun Hua, had been brought back to Malaysia 2 months ago. The ashes were allegedly scattered into the sea as well as the Titiwangsa range. The ashes reportedly arrived in Ipoh on September the 16th and a memorial ceremony attended by some 150 people was held on the same day. For Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Sri Dr. Wan Azizah Wan Ismail, the controversial issue over Chin Peng's ashes being brought back to Malaysia is striking a nerve among the people, especially from the armed forces. She also reiterated that the government had not received any application to bring the remains of the former CPM leader into the country.
Tidak pernah menerima permohonan atau apa-apa ni tentang membawa balik ashes dia, ya, abu daripada mendiang Chin Peng lah. Ya. Jadi kita juga fikirkan ada sensitiviti bahawa masa komunis dulu ada juga jasa dan pengorbanan perwira kita dulu. Jadi kita tengoklah macam mana saya bagi pada mindah untuk menimbang apakah mereka kalau mereka menerima permohonan untuk membawa balik abu Chin Peng.
It was reported previously that the former communist leader had expressed a desire to be buried on home soil. Chin Peng led the Communist Party of Malaya's guerrilla insurgency during the Malayan emergency in an attempt to establish an independent communist state. The previous government administration had issued a warning against bringing his remains or ashes to Malaysia. Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad was awestruck by the Petronas floating liquefied natural gas Dua, PFLNG Dua, which is able to reach deep water gas reserves located up to 1,500 meters underwater. The Prime Minister said he is proud to see Malaysians operating all the facilities to conduct the processes of extracting LNG on the vessel.
It's, unimaginable. It's so big, and the whole plant is here, and the size, if you stand it up, it is almost as tall as the Twin Towers. And the facilities are, fantastic, that they can do all these things on board ship, and at the same time bring up the gas through all those pipes, and yet and they are operated by Malaysians.
Tun Dr. Mahathir was speaking to TV3 after visiting the vessel at Samsung Heavy Industries Gyeongje shipyard on Wednesday. The Prime Minister was accompanied by Tun Dr. Siti Hasmah Muhammad Ali, who was the lady's sponsor and carried out the ceremonial rope cuttings during the vessel's official naming as PFLNG Dua. He said it is possible for Malaysia to build such facilities too if it learns the trade. Asked whether Petronas could build another FLNG vessel, Tun Dr. Mahathir said the country has enough LNG reserves for it, but that depends very much on demand. The vessel, which can accommodate gas production, offshore pipeline, gas liquefaction, as well as storage and offloading facilities, will be deployed at Rotan gas field 140 kilometers offshore Kota Kinabalu, Sabah. The vessel is scheduled for its sail away in February 2020. It is 100% owned by the national oil and gas company Petronas and is being constructed by a consortium made up of JGC Corporation of Japan and Samsung Heavy Industries of South Korea. The Freedom of Information Act is expected to become a reality next year and will include some of the provisions of the Official Secrets Act OSA 1972, which will be abolished. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Datuk Liew Vui Keong, said the Cabinet had mandated him to work with Communications and Multimedia Minister Gobind Singh Dio to develop the new act. Datuk Liew said this to clarify the statement by his deputy, Muhammad Hanifah Maidin, who told the Dewan Rakyat earlier this month that the government was still considering whether to abolish the Official Secrets Act 1972, improve it or to retain it, together with the proposed Freedom of Information Act.
This is not in line with the decision of the Cabinet. We may have to retain some of the provision in the OSA, like it or not, the information that officially secrets, especially when it comes to defense, then when it comes to the security of the nations. Some of the information cannot be disclosed to the public as they wanted.
Datuk Liew said this to reporters after delivering a keynote address at the National Stakeholders Consultation on the Right of Information legislation in Putrajaya on Wednesday. He said the formulation of the Act would be subjected to sufficient engagement undertaken throughout the policy and drafting process. The formulation required an in-depth and holistic study to ensure it would not contravene any existing laws. On another issue, Datuk Liew said the Dewan Rakyat Speaker can cite members of Parliament, MPs, who failed to declare their assets after the December 5th deadline for contempt. He said they could be suspended from attending the Dewan Rakyat sitting or fined. According to Liew, Pakatan Harapan MPs had declared their assets in October 2018, which had been displayed on the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission's website for public inspection. He also brushed aside unfounded suggestions that security was a reason for not declaring the assets.
Dan sekiranya mereka tidak membuat pengisytiharan harta nanti apabila selepas deadline, terlebih saya rasa notis telah pun diberi dengan mencukupi kepada mereka. Right, so it's already sufficient notice given to them. If they still don't want to file their asset declaration, maka pihak Dewan Speaker dapat mengambil tindakan terhadap mereka.
In July, the Dewan Rakyat had unanimously approved a motion compelling all MPs to declare their assets and those of their wives and husbands, children and trustees through a statutory declaration. The Dewan Rakyat on November the 26th had also agreed to extend the deadline for declaration of assets by MPs to December the 5th this year. The government will start removing fuel subsidies by gradually increasing the price of RON 95 fuel by 1 cent each week from January next year. Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Deputy Minister Chong Cheng Jen told the Dewan Rakyat that the price of fuel will go up until it reaches market price.
Kita akan mengapungkan harga petrol berperingkat, iaitu 2 sen, 1 sen, 2 sen satu minggu atau 1 sen satu minggu.
The move was in line with the implementation of the new petrol subsidy program PSP, which will also begin in January next year. Under the PSP, eligible car owners will receive a 30 ringgit monthly subsidy, while motorcycle owners will receive 12 ringgit. For a start, recipients of the Bantuan Sara Hidup BSH in Peninsular Malaysia who own vehicles registered under their name and with a valid road tax are entitled for the PSP. Tenaga Nasional Berhad TNB posted a 140.1% jump in its net profit to 1.2 billion ringgit in the third quarter ended September 30th, 2019. This against 501 million ringgit recorded in the same quarter last year due to its lower operating costs. Its revenue, however, fell 3.3% to 12.64 billion ringgit from 13.07 billion ringgit, while its earnings per share for the quarter stood at 21.15 sen against 8.83 sen a year ago. Meanwhile, in the first 9 months of September 30th, TNB posted a net profit of 3.87 billion ringgit, while its revenue increased by 2.4% to 38.7 billion ringgit. Commenting on its prospects, the utility giant expects the performance to remain stable for financial year ending December 31st, 2019. Online scam syndicate crippled in Sabah. This and more home stories when we return. Welcome back. Datuk Sri Muhammad Najib Tun Razak asked that the issue of 2 differing versions of One Malaysia Development Berhad 1MDB financial statements not be included in the final audit report, promising an investigation into it later. In making this statement, Tan Sri Amrin Buang, who was the Auditor General at the time, said he agreed to the request based on the former Prime Minister's promise. Testifying at the Kuala Lumpur High Court on Wednesday, Tan Sri Amrin recalled that he was asked to attend a meeting at the Prime Minister's office by the former Prime Minister's private secretary, Tan Sri Shukri Mohamad Saleh, to discuss the audit report. The meeting, which was held before February the 22nd, 2016, was also attended by former Chief Secretary to the government, Tan Sri Ali Hamzah. Tan Sri Amrin said Datuk Sri Najib asked him for a briefing on serious issues that were found during the audit, and so he raised the matter of 1MDB having 2 different financial statements. The witness revealed that Datuk Sri Najib had also promised him that the relevant authorities would investigate and get to the bottom of the matter. On the meeting held 2 days later, on February the 24th, Tan Sri Amrin said Tan Sri Ali instructed him and former National Audit Department NAD Audit Director Sadatul Nafisa Bashir Ahmad to attend the meeting, while the remaining members of the 1MDB audit team were to wait outside the meeting room. During the meeting, Tan Sri Amrin said the NAD was pressured to listen to the response from 1MDB about its findings. He also stressed that former 1MDB CEO Arul Kanda Kandasamy expressed many opinions on the matter of the 2 versions of financial statements produced by 1MDB and pressured the NAD to not include the matter in the audit report. Datuk Sri Muhammad Najib Tun Razak is accused of using his position to order amendments to the 1MDB final audit report before it was tabled to the PAC to avoid any action against him, while Arul Kanda was charged with abetting Datuk Sri Najib. The hearing continues before Justice Muhammad Zaini Mazlan on Thursday. 104 Chinese nationals were nabbed for being part of an online scam syndicate in Sabah on Tuesday. This following 3 separate raids by the Sabah Immigration Department in Kota Kinabalu. According to State Immigration Director Datuk Muhammad Sadi Muhammad Amin, the syndicate had recruited members from China before sending them to Sabah.
Dan kami melihat bahawa modus operandi atau MO ini hampir sama dengan kes tangkapan 680 orang warga Cina yang berjaya dilaksanakan oleh pihak immigration Ibu Pejabat Kuala Lumpur dan juga Negeri Selangor pada 20 November 2019 baru-baru ini.
He added the online scam activities, which targeted victims from China, are believed to have been operational for 2 months in the area. During the raids, 94 men and 10 women aged between 18 and 39 were detained, and 916 mobile phones, 348 SIM cards, 64 laptops and 28 desktop computers were seized. The value of the items seized is still being investigated. This is one of the biggest scams foiled by the Sabah Immigration Department this year. 7 sentenced to death in connection with the deadly Dhaka cafe attack. Don't go away. Welcome back. More than 260 million children worldwide are currently still out of school, some 60 million of whom are of primary school age, according to recent UNESCO projections. According to experts, the reason this happens is because global education donors usually focus on improving learning outcomes for children who are already in school, thus often neglecting the fact that many children worldwide are missing out on education opportunities entirely. From Doha, Qatar, Azaria Tagaya has this report.
Economic or social disadvantages and inadequate infrastructures are just some of the factors influencing why children miss out on early education. According to Tim Howarth, Chief Executive Officer of United World Schools, or UWS, the biggest hurdles in reaching these children can often be one of the simplest things.
We work with Dalit communities in Nepal, we work with indigenous minority groups in Cambodia, and one of the big barriers to education for them is language, because they speak their own indigenous language, so their mother tongue is very, very rarely the national language. So therefore everything we do has to be very thoughtfully co-constructed with the community, which is why we work very, very closely with community leaders, with local government, to make sure we're teaching the national curriculum, but we're doing so in a way that's relevant to an indigenous minority 5-year-old who's just starting their educational journey.
UWS was among 6 winners of the 2019 WISE Awards at this year's World Innovation Summit for Education WISE 2019, held in Doha, Qatar recently, which recognizes innovative solutions to address global educational challenges. UWS has helped make education accessible for more than 30,000 children so far. Also in that list is Street Child, which works in countries such as Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and Liberia.
Family poverty is the biggest challenge that we're currently looking at. And that's not to say that it stands alone. There are often a number of barriers that prevent children from going to school, both economic and social factors. So the clue's in the name. We work with a lot of street-connected children, and those children are on the streets not just because their families can't afford to send them to school, but also sometimes because of social reasons. They've been ostracized from the family. Maybe they're not with their biological parents.
The issue of out-of-school children is one that is complex and requires a multifaceted solution, a strategy of sorts to provide those out of reach with equal opportunities to quality education. But as we learned, the issues and challenges faced are often unique to each country and community, and thus requires unique solutions. This topic took center stage at WISE 2019, drawing in more than 3,000 educators, policymakers, and social activists from around the globe to Doha. Educate a Child, or EAC, the world's only fund dedicated to enrolling out-of-school children, unveiled a new strategy to help countries get the hardest-to-reach kids into the classroom, called the Zero Strategy. Grammy winner Shakira Mubarak, who founded the Barefoot Foundation, was also in attendance and announced announced a new partnership with EAC to enroll 54,000 out-of-school children from her native country of Colombia over the next 2 years. To ensure the success of the Zero strategy, EAC has already started discussions with select countries and aims to work with at least 3 governments per year. Azaria Tagaya, reporting together with cameraman Aizad Aidid, Doha, Qatar.
A special anti-terrorism court in Bangladesh has sentenced 7 members of a banned militant group to death on Wednesday for their involvement in a deadly attack on a Dhaka cafe in 2016 that killed 22 people, including 18 foreigners. Judge Mojibur Rahman delivered the verdict after finding them guilty of various charges, including aiding and abetting a criminal organization, as well as participating in a criminal conspiracy. It is understood that a total of 8 suspects were put on trial, but one of the suspects was acquitted as the charges against him could not be proved. However, according to a defense lawyer, the 7 men would appeal the sentence. Over in Albania, rescuers pulled at least 26 bodies and more than 40 survivors from the rubble following a powerful earthquake, as several European countries stepped in to help with the relief efforts on Wednesday. The European Commission said it had deployed rescue teams from Italy, Greece and Romania to help with the search efforts, while teams were also sent from Kosovo and Montenegro. It is understood that most of the deaths occurred in the coastal city of Durrës and the town of Tumani, close to the epicenter. So far, there was no indication on Wednesday as to how many people might still be buried in the rubble. Meanwhile, the Albanian Red Cross said it had deployed doctors, first aid workers and 160 volunteers and was providing urgent medical assistance, food and water for survivors.